video, just kind of catching up everyone. Where have I been? What have I been doing? If you watched the last video, you know that I got married last year. I just actually celebrated my first year anniversary of my husband. And so I am in shock of how much God has done in 1 year's time. So we got married last year, and then we found out maybe like less than a month later that we were expecting our first child. And so quickly our marriage was us being newlyweds, but also being pregnant, having a baby. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about my experience as much as I can recall in this live. I'll do another video where I'll be able to share photos, videos, things like that. But I'll start from before I even got pregnant. I remember always saying that I wanted to have, and all my friends and family know this, I always wanted to have a water birth because I lean quite crunchy granola. And so I am all about like sustainability. I'm, leaning into holistic health and things like that. And so I wanted to have a water birth. I didn't know all the logistics, but I knew that's something I wanted. I didn't know anything about midwifery. I didn't know anything about birthing centers. I just knew a water birth would be really cool if that happened. And so going into it, I was not hell bent on it, but I was just kind of like, okay, this is something I would really like in an ideal world. And so when we first found out we were pregnant, let me even share with you what that was like. I remember feeling a little bit off. I remember thinking to myself, like, something about my body feels different. And I think first it was my boobs. And I remember being like, do they feel tender? Do they feel bigger? Something about them was different, right? And so I remember being like, something is off. So I wanted to take pregnancy tests. So I took like 3 pregnancy tests and they were negative. And I just remember thinking like, I think I'm pregnant, but I'm not sure what's really going on. And so I remember that I took a pregnancy test after feeling like very sharp pain. I thought it was like period cramps. And I remember being like, let me take a pregnancy test just in case. And I think what they call it is implantation pain, but I actually felt the implantation pain and I thought I was having my period. Period didn't come. I took a pregnancy test. It was negative. We had a prayer call with one of our spiritual parents, my spiritual mom, and she prayed and was just like, okay, we feel a peace. We feel like, okay, something's gonna happen very soon. And then after that, I took the pregnancy test. I went to sleep, woke up in the morning. The pregnancy test was positive in the morning when I took the pregnancy test again. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm pregnant. This is interesting. And so after that, I remember thinking to myself like, oh man, now that we're expecting a baby, what are we gonna do? So we were living in an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment. Our lease was ending. So we knew we were going to be moving very soon. We knew that there were some shifts happening in our lives. And so we were just kind of preparing. I want to say that I didn't tell anyone at work I was pregnant until I was like obviously showing. And so I was pregnant and kind of like gaslighting my colleagues because they could see I was like visibly getting chubbier. And I work with all women, and the women's code is that you just don't ask someone if they're expecting. You just don't. Even if it's obvious, even if they have this huge bump, you just don't ask, right? And so nobody asked me if I was pregnant, but as soon as I announced, I think I must have been like maybe 6 or 7 months pregnant, because there were certain things with travel, with food, with needing breaks and accommodations that I had to kind of disclose that I was expecting. So I shared with my team. And like I said, I worked at a nonprofit with all women. Everyone was super supportive, very nice. And so it was interesting that even my career shifted because I was expecting a baby. So that was kind of cool. Kept it really hush hush. Didn't really tell anyone other than my close friends and family. Maybe it's a Nigerian people thing. We just don't tell a lot of people when we're expecting. And so the first appointments we had were at like a regular doctor. The hospital system that I'd been doing my well women's and all my other health things with. And then I just remembered that one particular appointment, I felt like just a number. I didn't feel like they were paying much attention to us with the pregnancy, with the baby. It didn't feel very individual. It felt very kind of like, next in the line. And I didn't like that feeling. And we had a transvaginal ultrasound, which if you think if you think the little pap smear thing is a lot, this is like a wand being stuck up there to do the ultrasound. Anyway, confirmed that the baby was there. I was like, wow, this is cool. And that was at the regular hospital, and that was actually the last appointment we had with them, because after that we just started searching for something else. We wanted something a little bit more personal. Yeah, so we were looking for that. And I remember before I got pregnant, I was asking pregnant people, does pregnancy feel like an alien infestation? Because I didn't know. It just felt like, there's this living creature inside of you eating your food, sapping your energy, taking your nutrients. And that was my idea. I love babies, but the mechanics of pregnancy I didn't really get. And so, as the pregnancy went on, I will say, and I kept saying this the whole time, my baby was very nice to me in embryo. Yeah, as a little baby inside, my baby was so nice. I didn't get morning sickness. I didn't get like huge mood swings. I didn't even have cravings. The only thing I really craved was agege bread. I'm Nigerian. It's like this soft, milky kind of bread. That's all I really wanted. I used to love chocolate chip cookies. I didn't really want chocolate. And so, yeah, maybe Fanta, orange Fanta, and agege bread. Those were like the only things that I was like, oh, I think I would like this. But it wasn't like, I need to have it right now. So, yeah, I didn't have that. And I didn't really have any complications. Maybe I was sleepier than usual. And then at the very, very end, I got like sciatic pain in, and it would just kind of, oh, thank you, nice hair, thank you. I had sciatic pain in my back, and I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. And it only happened, and this is kind of weird. I used to lead worship when I was before pregnancy. And so I was trying to be up there with the big boys and big girls. And, I was still jumping around and all the things. One particular time, my husband and I were doing, what at a worship event. So I was on the worship team. And my husband says that he saw me jump and do a spin, like a Super Mario type of spin. I don't recall doing it, but he was in the congregation. He saw me. He said, I did this spin, and when I went home, my back was on fire, and that triggered the sciatic nerve pain to the point where I went to the chiropractor. And I'd gone to chiropractors before this, but I went to the chiropractor. And then when I went home, I was in excruciating pain to the point where it scared me. And I was like, I don't know that I'm supposed to be going to the chiropractor right now. So I just didn't go ever again after that during my pregnancy, because yeah, something popped and didn't pop back, and I just didn't like the feeling. To the point where we went to IKEA right after the appointment, and I had to have a little wheelchair because I could barely walk. So I had a little cane that I used for a few days because that nerve was so pinched, and I did so many exercises, and it was not good. So yes, I started to have those kind of issues around that time. We switched over to a birthing center. The praise report about that is that my husband's good friend, and now my good friend, is a doula, and she teaches all these childbirth education types of classes. So we actually took her 4-week class, and we were so educated. One of my big things was that if we were going to have a natural birth, an unmedicated birth, a water birth, my husband, I wanted him to be as educated about the process as he possibly could. And he was all about that too. And so we sat in that class and we took all of the notes that we could. We took the childbirth class, we took the breastfeeding class. The funny thing about the breastfeeding class is that, anyway, I'll get to it later, but we weren't supposed to take the class, but we just happened to be available, and that class was amazing. So the birthing center is called Nativity Birthing Center. I think there's another word there, Nativity Family, something like that. It's called Nativity. And so they were amazing. Our midwife, her name is Jamie. And Jamie has all of these nurses that are working with her. Shaletta was one of them. She has birthing assistants. She has students in midwifery that also help out. And so all throughout, it was cute. It was like a house that had a clinic on the inside. And so I would get weighed. I'd get seen by the midwife. I'd get seen by nurses. I could talk about my symptoms. We could look at the baby and an ultrasound, all of the things that you get at the hospital, but it was more one-on-one care. And it was the kind of care as a first-time mom, as first-time parents, that I think was really important. All of our appointments were supposed to be 30 minutes, but we would stop and we would ask a million questions, and Jamie would answer all of them. And so I love that instead of, and this is what I was doing that was keeping me up at night, instead of going to Reddit. I don't know why Reddit has so much information, but I was on forums like new parents, babies, pregnancy, and I was looking up all of this stuff, and it was scaring me. And I would bring my questions to Jamie, and she'd be like, no, this is what it is, and this is what it is. So it was better to have a medical professional to ask all those questions rather than being up late at night. It was to the point where those Reddit forums were giving me so much anxiety that I prayed about it. And the Lord was like, I need you to get off Reddit for just a little bit. Trust me with your postpartum journey. Trust me with the rest of your pregnancy. Get off Reddit. Ask me, pray about it. Ask real people that you know about their experiences, but don't ask strangers on the internet. And so making that switch was something that was really helpful to me. But before that, I was just kind of making myself so anxious by reading all of the horror stories online, even stuff like people hating their husbands because of pregnancy hormones, or all stuff like that. That's like unnecessary things to be afraid of. My husband was amazing during the whole pregnancy. He was so nice, didn't let me open the door, cooked really great nutritious meals, all of the things. And we even moved to this new place in the middle of the pregnancy. I just sat and helped organize, but he and the crew, they moved everything. And so shout out to my husband. I had a beautiful pregnancy, really because he was intentional about taking care of me and the baby. He was covering us in prayer. I'll have to admit this, and I think many people don't talk about this. I was reading this book called Supernatural Childbirth, which was an amazing book. They have in the book like really great prayers and declarations that you can say over yourself and your pregnancy and your baby and all, and even your delivery. The idea is that you're believing the Lord for a supernatural childbirth experience, and so something that shows that the Lord is assisting you in a special grace. I will say I definitely had a supernatural childbirth. I'll talk about that in just a little bit, but one of the interesting things about my pregnancy is that I struggled to pray. And I don't tell many people this, but I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I was under a lot of spiritual attack. And in my mind, I was very anxious. And whenever I would pray, they would be like, pray over your son and pray over your body and all the things. My prayers were just very simple. They were like, God, please help us. Help us make it to the end. I didn't have all of the I didn't have all the speaking in tongues. I didn't have all the gusto that I thought I would have. But what my husband told me behind the scenes is that he was praying fervently for us. He could sense that the enemy was trying to introduce fear into our pregnancy, that the enemy had a plan so that our baby wouldn't make it all the way through. And my husband was like warring for us. When I could not pray, my husband was praying for us. And I think that's such a big deal. We don't talk a lot about covering. My husband was my covering during the pregnancy. And even when we entered into the delivery, childbirth experience, he was covering from start to finish. And I have to give him props for that. I am so grateful for him, for his presence, for his relationship with the Lord, for his sensitivity, for his attentiveness in all of our classes. Like, he knew what to do. He was not like, oh my goodness, all the first time fathers that you usually see, fainting or like being generally unhelpful. He was not that. So let me fast forward. We had a really great pregnancy. Yay, yay, yay. Birthing center was awesome and all the prep. Let's talk about when I actually went into labor. So I was due sometime in August. Baby didn't come until September. And I ended up being, I want to say 41 weeks and 5 days, 5 or 6 days, 41 and 5. And that baby was staying in there. He did not want to come out. And we were doing all of the, when I passed the due date, we would keep coming back to the birthing center just to check on him. They had this like little thing that they strapped around my stomach. It felt really old school, but apparently hospitals use it now. And they would check the my baby's like reactivity to different things, like if I had sugar, or if I had a contraction, what did it do to the baby's heartbeat. So we were checking the baby, monitoring him very closely. He was doing really well. And they let us do one last ultrasound to take a look at him. In the ultrasound, you could actually see his curly hair in the ultrasound. You could see his belly rolls. And then they were like, "Oh, this is a big baby." And we're like, first of all, I'm a petite person. I'm 5'2", 5'3". Me and my husband are not super tall, huge people. And so we were not expecting a big baby. And so whenever it was the time to look the weight, they're like, "Oh, we're thinking maybe he'll be like 9 pounds, 10 pounds." And we're like, a 10-pound baby coming out of me? There were times when I was like carrying the baby that I remember thinking to myself, this can't be just one baby. The way the baby was sitting in my body, I could feel like a leg here, and then I could feel another leg here. And I was like, how is he in this belly? He was probably, now that I realize, he turned actually pretty early to come down. So I thought he was coming down. He did not come down. He waited his sweet, 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 precious time, and he stayed up there. Even now on the outside, he loves to cuddle and be up on somebody. But his 2 feet were like down here underneath my ribs. He didn't kick me in the ribs. That's why I kept saying he's such a good baby. He was so considerate. He wasn't like kicking me. He would more so roll. He did a lot of rolling, and I could feel him like shifting. But I guess because of his size, he didn't really turn around. He just kind of shifted, and he slept a lot. Whenever it was time to like look at him in the ultrasound, we were like, can he move? There were times they had to measure his face and stuff like that, and so they needed him to be active. He was sleeping. Almost every ultrasound he was sleeping. So he's still like that. He loves to sleep. He's such a good baby. Oh my gosh, loves to sleep. So they were checking him, and so then they were like, okay, go home, just wait it out, blah blah blah. They gave me, I know this is controversial, but we were at a birthing center, very experienced. They gave me castor oil. Don't hate on her. They gave me castor oil to induce labor. They're like, if you want to. I felt fine about it, so I took it. That thing cleared me out. Cleared me out, okay? And I went to the restroom. And I promised everything in my system was gone. Everything was gone. And so I was like, ooh, okay. So that happened, and still didn't go into labor. And so I'm expecting like it's like the movies. Okay, my water's gonna break. I'm at the grocery store. We went on 2 really good dates waiting for the baby. We went to the movies, and then the baby still didn't come. So the next day we went to the escape room, which I was like, if we don't get out of this room and I go into labor, what's gonna happen? So we went on the escape room like the day before I went into labor, which was very fun. I had a good time. And I thought it was just important to have those special times with my husband before 2 becomes 3. And so I really cherished that. I went home and I started having contractions. I had contractions, I want to say, for like a week. And they were just kind of building, but they weren't consistent enough. I had the timer that says it's supposed to be like coming at a steady pace. They would be coming close, and then they'd be longer apart. And so it wasn't building up into anything. And so I went to sleep, and my midwife was telling me if the contractions are getting too much, get in the water, and the water is going to help with the pain. And it definitely helped. Like sitting in an herbal bath or just hot water, warm, really warm water, really helped with the pain, which is why I was really oddly excited about the water birth, because I could tell that it was helping my pain with the contractions when I was in the water. So I was like, okay, this is definitely working. So being in the water during birth will be helpful. So I was sitting with my husband, and my mother-in-law was in town also. She was waiting for the baby. She had to change her travel plans because the baby took like a week to get here, almost a week to get here. Um, and so we were sitting on the couch after we had just done some exercise. Shout out to Grow with Joe. We did some dancing workouts and still nothing happened. I remember sitting on the couch and getting up and my mother-in-law pointing out like, "Oh, there's something on your pants." It was blood. It was like a blood clot. So finally my mucus plug came loose. Like, okay, great. Now we're cooking with grease. Something's gonna happen. Because all along the mucus plug didn't come out until after my due date. And so I was like, okay, something's gonna happen now. So the contractions were still coming. And then sometime in the morning, I wanna say like 3 a.m., something like that, the contractions were building to where they were like close enough to where it was progressing into something. I said, okay, babe, I think it's time. I think we need to go. So my mom came, my mother-in-law in the back seat together, and then me and my husband, we start driving down to the birthing center. Birthing center is like an hour or so away from us. And before, I was nervous because I said, if this baby comes during rush hour traffic and I have this baby while we're on the road, who knows? I had a 10-hour labor. That was your first baby. You're not gonna have the baby on the road, probably not for the first. So we're driving and we get there, nobody's there, which is so awesome. We had the whole place to ourselves. The way the birthing center is that there's a clinic section and then there's another section, which is, it's a dream. It was so homey. It's basically a house that they connected with like a bridgeway walkway. And so we got our own room. The room had a bed. It had a huge jacuzzi, which is where I did the water birth. And then I could walk around, I could eat, I could do all the things. And so we finally get there and we start getting ready for labor. I kind of stripped down to, I think I'm wearing like a tank top bra and some shorts. And so I don't know why I even thought I was gonna be wearing underwear. So in the room ended up being my husband, my mother-in-law, my mom, my sister, my cousin. Yeah, and I had those five. And those five, whoo, they were my prayer warriors. It was such a beautiful birth. And I say that I have a supernatural birthing experience because the birthing center owner is a believer. And so we just had this atmosphere of prayer and worship. It was great. So we got in the water almost immediately. I say we because I was in the water, my husband was in the water with me. It was just such a beautiful experience. And so I got there. Remember, this is like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., we start like laboring. It's like, okay, contractions were coming. And the contractions were okay. Like, okay, all right, this is fine. This is kind of similar to what I felt like at the house. But the great thing is that this jacuzzi was like high. So the water was like up my waist. And, I could really get in the water and it was nice and it was like soothing to me. As far as staff, they had birthing assistants and then midwife students. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4. So like it was pretty good. And so we're laboring. Our midwife doula friend Shaletta is there. She's helping out. And so it just is a calm environment. And obviously I'll spoiler part, right? Like, remember how people say, oh, when you're in labor, you feel it, but after you don't remember. I literally don't remember. The only thing that's interesting is that people took videos because I wanted them. People took videos. So when I see the videos, I can remember, oh, that was painful. I can't remember in my body, but I'm like, look at myself. I'm in pain, obviously. So I'm not going to say it was pain-free. It definitely was painful. But the water was so helpful. Having my husband rub my back. Someone's job was like putting a cold towel on my forehead and dabbing it. So everyone was like all hands on deck, making sure the water stayed warm. They gave me like flotation things so I could lean back in the jacuzzi. And so I was laboring for quite some time in the water. I was like, okay, I'm thinking surely this baby's gonna come out anytime now. This baby's coming anytime now. So I start, I'm crouching in the water. I'm like doing the sumo squat because I think this baby's about to pop out. They look at me, and I want to say like 4 hours into labor, I'm at 9.5 centimeters dilated. I'm okay. Let me pause with the dilation thing because I don't think I understood because no one explained it. This dilation feeling, you feel like you're just open. It feels like your body is opening to a point that your insides are about to come out. Okay. And when we were doing the birthing class, they kept calling the toilet the dilation station. And I was like, that's a kind of weird name. But there were times where they were like, okay, we want to see if we can progress things, see if you can sit down on the toilet. I would sit down on the toilet and it was so uncomfortable. Was it painful? I think it might have even been anytime I was asked to like sit down, I just felt so open, like nothing was holding me together anymore. And I just felt like not even just the baby. I felt like my insides were about to come out. And it didn't feel comfortable. I couldn't do it. Even they had me I think they had me like bouncing on the bouncy ball. That was painful. Like that was uncomfortable. So at some point, because I wasn't progressing in the water, towards the very end, they were like, okay, we might have to move to the bed because what's happening is that we can see the baby's head. We can see the hair, but your pubic bone is like tapping him here. So he's not able to like come out of the canal. So we can see him. We know he's right there. You've been at 9.5 for hours at this point, and it's not progressing. We need this baby to get out of there. So we need to move to the bed. I didn't love moving to the bed, but I wasn't against it. There's nothing wrong with it. I had labored in the water. And so we're hours in. We're hours into the birth at this point, and I'm like, okay, so we come out of the water, and now I'm on the bed. And on the bed, we try several different positions. They try with me like my hands on the bed and my butt like off of it. That's fine. They have me on my knees on the bed. That's fine too. Ultimately, I ended up with my last position where he came out on my back. I'm on the bed on my back. And the weird thing about it is that whenever they're in the movies, they're like, push, push. They make it just seem like all you have to do is, and that's what makes a baby come out. The pushing is even a whole different thing. And the funny thing about my birth in the videos, I just kept cracking jokes because when I'm uncomfortable, I make jokes. And so I'm like, ha, ha, ha. I'm pausing and like observing things in the room. I'm asking questions, for clarity. I'm a clarity queen, even in the midst of like excruciating pain. I'm a clarity queen. And they kept saying like, okay, you need to bear down and push. And I was like, excuse me, I don't understand mechanics. Someone needs to explain what bearing down and pushing is like. And so apparently it was like, you have to catch your breath. And then once you have the breath, you have enough to bear down with. And so when I first was starting out, I was like, that's not enough. You need to, and then after that, I pushed so hard, y'all, that I bust two vessels in both of my eyes. So I had like blood here and blood here. I busted vessels in my eyes because I was pushing too hard. The hardest thing I've ever done. And so I kept pushing, and they were saying basically his head was coming out like this and going back in, like he kept doing that. And so my husband was like, babe, I see the head. I see his head. He's right there. He's right there. And I just remember being like, and shout out to all of the people in the room. God is so good that the right people were in the room at that time. My older sister, I watched her give birth twice. I mean, she had 2 C-sections, so we couldn't see her surgery, but I'd been with her in birth twice. Or no, the first time, second time she did it by herself. And so she'd given birth twice. She was like, Timmy, this baby needs to come out. And so you have to do everything that you can in order to make this baby come out. Okay, I know it's hard. I know it's hurting. I know it just feels impossible right now, but you have to do this so that your baby can come out. And it was just a brief come to Jesus talk that I was okay, get your head in the game, get your head in the game. And so I started doing my pushing. At some point, I think my oxygen levels started to dip and the baby's oxygen levels were dipping. So they gave me an oxygen mask. And then I remembered, like, as I was pushing, I was like, hey, y'all said I could have laughing gas. And I was like, hey, can I have that laughing gas? And they're like, we're like hours into the birth, like the baby's about to come out. I was like, hey, can I have that laughing gas? They're like, we're beyond that right now. I was like, oh, you're right. I think I just wanted to have it because the pain, it was painful, right? It was painful, but I just remember thinking, like, when this baby comes out, this pain will stop. Okay, so the baby's right there. And so there's a moment, I forget what they call it. There's a moment where it just feels like you can't. Oh, it's called transition, I think. You feel like I can't do this. Take me to the hospital. Cut this baby out. You know, when you start to feel, I can't. And I had a brief moment of panic. Let me say this. Earlier, when I first, another shout out to my husband. Oh my gosh, so grateful for him. When we first got in the water and the contractions started to get really intense, I remember being like, ah, help me, help me, help me. Like, very, like, I don't know, puny type of crying, like, help me. And then my husband just looked at me. So many come to Jesus talks that were needed. My husband was like, the Lord is helping you. He's helping you. He's helping you right now. And just that one talk, he looked me in my eyes, held my face, the Lord is helping you. And I was like, okay, okay, okay. And I went from saying, help me, to like, thank you, Lord, for helping me. Thank you, Lord, for helping me. God, you're helping me. Thank you, Jesus, for helping me. Thank you for helping me. Anytime I was feeling pain, I just kept saying, thank you, Jesus, for helping me. And I would have never imagined that I'm the type of person who's like praying during birth. Like, it was an ideal that I had in my mind before I went into labor. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool? I had a vision of myself like praying in tongues while I was giving birth. And I just remember being like, is that realistic? People say birth is so bad that you're just like screaming your head off. What time do I have to be praying in tongues? But literally, as I was saying, oh, thank you, Lord Jesus, for helping me. Thank you, God, for helping me. There were times where I didn't have words. I knew I wanted to pray. I knew I needed the Lord's help, and I didn't know what to say. So I would just pray in tongues, and I'd be praying in tongues, and I was singing. There's a beautiful video. I'll try and share it. I think it's already on my YouTube, but me and my husband just start singing. Out of my belly shall flow rivers, rivers of living water. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we just start singing. And as contractions are passing, singing the spirit, singing that song. And I was even having an out of body moment in that time in me. Like, how is this happening? How is the Lord giving me enough peace? That's the only way I can say it. There was so much peace in that room and so much grace for birthing. It's like, how is the Lord giving me this much peace that I can sing in the middle of this, that I can pray, that I can just breathe? Everything was so calm. No one was chaotic or running around. Every single person was so calm in that room. There were times where you would just hear singing and then the sloshing of water. And it was just so silent and peaceful in a birthing room. That was wild. Okay, so that was peaceful until we get to that transition moment where I went from, thank you, Lord, for helping me. And then it was, it was like my eyes open. I was like, ah. I'm laughing at myself because I heard my own screaming and I was like, ah. Like, it just started to be all of a sudden like very painful. And I was like, oh wait, ah. And we were past the point of going to the hospital. We were past the point of laughing gas. We were past epidural. We were past all of that. There wasn't even any epidural, which is wild. As a first time mom, there wasn't any epidural at that place. And so my husband comes to calm me down to say, my sister D comes to calm me down. She's like, okay, Timmy, you got this. You got this. You have this. Almost there. We can literally see his head. He's right there. He's right there. He's right there. And I'm pushing, and I take a breath, and I'm like, okay, I have to gather myself for the next push. And I hear them say, the baby's heartbeat is going down. You have to call the EMS. Something in my mind was like, something's wrong with my baby? Something, let's go. It's like Super Saiyan, like, ah. And so I'm even like double pushing, right? I take a breath like, like double pushing like that because I'm like, this baby has to get out of here. So I hear Shaletta, our doula friend, the birthing assistant there, I hear her call and she's saying, but baby's heart rate is going down. We need EMS to come here right now, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh no, it's go time. This baby has to come out of here. And so, this is the, had it not been for the Lord, had it not been for the Lord, we would be having a whole different conversation right now. So the baby's heart rate is going down. He's right there, but he's getting stuck, right? My midwife asked me, are you okay with me giving you an episiotomy? And I'd signed paperwork before saying whether yes or no, blah, blah. And I said, if need be, if you need to save the baby's life and that's what we need to do, fine. I would rather not, but if that's what it takes to save the baby's life, okay. So she was like, would you be okay if it comes to that for us to do it? We're like, yeah. We'd already agreed beforehand, yes, but she wanted to consent in real time. I was like, yes, whatever needs to happen to get him out of there. Because he was right there, right? And so she was like, we're going to do everything we can to not have to do that, but just need to know. Okay, great. Then she starts, as I'm pushing, she is like holding me open as he's coming out, right? So at the same time, she's trying to like not make me tear, but at the same time trying to like, it's almost like she's doing this with her two hands to give him extra room as he's pushing. So he's pushing, and my husband says he was there watching her like, gah! The things women go through, okay? Y'all need to respect women, truly. So pushing, his head keeps coming in and out, in and out. And so final push, she's like, okay, Timmy, I need you to give me the biggest push of your life. Give me one last big push. And I go, until all the breath is out of me. And then as I'm pushing, he's coming out and they're like pulling him out. My husband says that his head was like stretching because they had to kind of pull him, like get around his head and guide him out. Whew, his head was like a little cone-like, just a teach, just a little cone-like. And so she was like guiding his, like, not just pulling his head off his body, God forbid, but like as he was coming out, like guiding his head out. Anyway, so he comes out and my baby comes out and he's like this. I feel like he's like shell shocked because he took that first breath to be like, but then he didn't breathe in and out. And he was just like kind of staring at everyone in the room. His eyes are open. He's staring at everybody in the room, but he hasn't yet taken the breath. And so they're like, okay, he's not breathing. Once again, midwife says, can I give your baby CPR? I said, yes. She gives the baby CPR. And then, and then he finally breathes and everyone in the room was like, as he takes his breath, EMS comes flooding in the room. We're here. And so he's already born. They came late, but they were like, okay, we need to check the mom. We need to check the baby. They're like checking our blood pressure, our vitals. And they were like, oh, we need to remove the baby from the umbilical cord. And my midwife was like, no, because he needs to have that cord blood. We agreed that's something we wanted to do. We wanted him to get, get the blood from the placenta. We didn't want to separate him right away. He was fine. His heart rate had gone back up. His coloring was good. They were able to check all of his vitals while he was connected, but I guess protocol-wise, they just thought they needed to like take him. They're like, okay, we want to take the mother and the baby. And my husband was like, no, she's fine. And I was, because I was under medical care. And my midwife was like, no. And everyone in the room was like, no, she's fine. And after the baby was born, I was feeling back to normal. I was just like in shock. Everyone was like, look at your baby. I'm looking at him. He's huge baby. And I just keep thinking, that's what he was looking like in there. He's big baby. He ended up being 8 pounds, 11 ounces, I think. My husband could correct me if I'm wrong. Big old baby. And he was born in the afternoon, and I just 10 hours of labor. 10 hours of labor. But there are many people who I know, first time moms, will who have like 20 something hours of labor. And yeah, so we had him in the afternoon. Ouch. Ooh, tension. Had him in the afternoon, and then because it was a birthing center, they checked me. They did all his footprints, fingerprints, all the things, did all his checks. They even let us do like this mother son, what do you call it? Like soaked in an herbal bath. The same bath, like the water was different. They cleaned it up and all the things. They let us soak in a bath together. Um, he was just like floating in the water. It was so cool. It's like, oh, he's been swimming this whole time. So he's like, I'm holding his head, but his body's just floating, having a very relaxing time. And then they stitched me while I was there. So I did have a little bit of a tear. First of all, his head was huge. How big was his head? I forget, but I remember them saying his head was big. His head was big, and his body was big. Just a big body baby, okay? And so I did tear a little bit, just a little bit. I tore like on the perennial area, and so they stitched me up. And I was grateful that that's all I had going home with. I didn't have preeclampsia during pregnancy. I didn't have anything like that. I just gave birth and literally went home the same day, hours after giving birth. I got to sleep in my own bed. And then that was great. Just the car ride home, I'm just in the back with him, looking at him like, this is the baby I've been looking forward to meet this whole time. He was sleeping like a grown man who just had a 12-hour shift. He was like, just like he was in the womb, like sleeping so hard. And it was great. The first night was awesome because, we had our baby with us. Where did he sleep? I think he had a little bassinet. Yeah, we had him sleep in the little bassinet. And I'd had some insomnia during pregnancy, so I was kind of used to not sleeping, period. So I didn't really sleep all that much. When we had a newborn, he definitely would wake up constantly to feed. One other thing, I'll talk about breastfeeding briefly before we go. Before I was pregnant, oddly enough, I had this feeling. I was like, okay, I'm gonna want to breastfeed. I had this incident where I had high levels of prolactin, and prolactin is the hormone needed for breastfeeding. And I had it, but I wasn't breastfeeding. I was like, I don't know what that's about. Now that I am breastfeeding, the prolactin is coming in handy. I had the colostrum, just a little bit of it, and it wasn't that like intense colostrum. It was like a little, so I was like, okay. But then my breasts were huge. Oh my gosh. I think I went from a C to like a double D. Like, boobs are huge. But then it turned out they weren't huge for nothing. I was able to produce pretty good milk. And so I'm grateful for that. One of the things I really wanted, because my sister did this and I thought it was really helpful, not just to help with the labor of breastfeeding, but also connection from the baby to the father. Combo feeding, in that I would breastfeed, but then my husband would feed the baby breast milk in a bottle. The bottle that she used and recommended, and I loved it, is the MAM bottles, MAM. They have anti-colic. And so the anti-colic bottles are amazing. He was able to go between my breast and the bottle nipple with no problem. And so, yeah, my baby has been probably bottle feeding and breastfeeding from maybe week 3. I try to do the exclusive breastfeeding thing, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And my baby can eat, my baby can sleep, and my baby can eat, by the grace of God. No issues with those two things, but very excessive in the sleeping, very excessive in the eating. So it's been great to have some help. Yeah, so that was my birth. I would say I had a supernatural childbirth just because there's so much peace in the room. The presence of God was there, the assistance of the Lord. Oh my gosh. If I ever doubt in my life before, I think there would be times that I would say like, oh, I don't know if the Lord's gonna come through the way, I don't know. Sometimes I would just be tripping and be doubting. the way the Lord came through for me and my son and my husband during our birthing experience, it just shows me the hand of God. It shows me how he's mighty to save, shows his loving kindness. And so I think that was the incident that I needed in my faith walk, to be reminded of God's character and his goodness and his might and all of those things. And because of that, I can now have in my mind, like, okay, God has already proven to me, look at my son. God has already proven to me that he can do all things and he can take care of his own. Why would he not take care of us in this instance? So I'm grateful for birth being that reminder. And so now that my baby is older and we are growing and going through all the different milestones, I have to keep trusting that same God to still be good to us and still be faithful to us in all things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Obviously, there's so much more. I think I'll put videos about, the nursery and the baby list and the registries and all the things. That's after. But I wanted to share my birth story to really encourage people. Number one, if you want to do something like a non-traditional birth, like a birthing center or a water birth or an unmedicated birth, I really encourage you to trust the Lord to help you with that. It's not something that you can do by power or by might. It's really the Spirit of God helping you. And that's why I kept saying, thank you, Lord, for helping me. I knew it wasn't just my own willpower or my own strength. Something supernatural was happening in that room to enable that baby to come out in the way that he did. And I'm so grateful, because had it not been for the Lord, like I said, we would have had a totally different birthing experience. I was totally open to being transferred to the hospital if need be, right? But I knew the vision for birth that I wanted. And so I held it loosely and I was like, God, whatever you want to do, blow on it, let it happen how you want it to happen. But this is my desire. And so he gave us a birthing story that testified to his goodness, which is the one I prefer. Not the one that is perfect for me, but one that shows just who God is. Yeah, so I highly encourage you to try non-traditional things if you're interested in that. There are many birthing centers popping up around the nation, people coming back to that, wanting that really hands-on care. And even if you decide to go the hospital route, having a doula, someone to advocate for you, is so helpful, because being educated is something that combats fear. Whenever I was like, oh, what's going on in my body, I would remember our class. Even now, breastfeeding, if something's happening to my milk supply, I'm like, okay, what did we learn in the class? What should I do here? Having those people in your corner that you can ask questions, that you can trust to pray for you or to hold your hand literally and figuratively in these hard times, it's really, really important. So yes, so shout out to our birthing center, Nativity. Shout out to our doula friend, Shaletta. Shout out to our family and friends who, not only the ones in the birthing room with us, my cousin Joe, my sister Dee, my mom, my mother-in-law, my husband, our midwife and her whole birthing crew, but also the people who are praying for us. When I would be getting the text like, hey, is the baby here yet? No, not yet. No, not yet. People would respond like, okay, we're praying, we're believing. And even people on the internet that we had not met before were praying for our baby. People sending us gifts, all of those things. So, so helpful. The baby is about to be 3 months, like I said. And so we are living in the prayers, the answered prayers that we've just been praying about over time. And so it's been a really, really beautiful season. Anyway, that is my supernatural birth story. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave me comments below. What do you think? Would you ever have a unmedicated birth? Would you ever do a water birth? What are your thoughts? What was your own birthing experience? Share below. I always love to hear positive ones also. I went looking for that when I was pregnant. And so I hope that you have a view of a positive birth story. Even though it had some complicated parts, at the end of the day, it was positive and God showed himself faithful for me and my family. Okay, bye y'all. Thanks for watching.